Hey, Podnutsians. Welcome to Linux for the Rest of Us, episode 243. My name is Door to Door Geek. We've been doing this show now for about 8 years. It's all about Linux for all kinds of people, whether you are a veteran or a newbie. We try to cover all the bases. If you're a huge fan of enterprise type technology, this is not the show for you. This show is brought to you by this week's Patreon supporter, Mike Deem. Thank you very much for the support. You started to support us back in 2017, October. Looks like your pledges might have lapsed, but it doesn't matter. We still thank you for any and all support. And we are again joined this week by Mr. Bruce Patterson. How's everything going, Bruce?
Doing pretty well. Hey, guess who I talked to the other day?
Tell me.
The Iron Man himself, John the Sharknado.
Oh man, I tell you, every time I'm able to talk to him, it brings me back to a place and a time kind of thing when everything just seemed simpler, easier, better, and happier. And when I talked to him last, it was for like over half an hour, which I told him, now, I don't expect us to talk again for another 3 months. So I just ended the call with, I love you, and I'll talk to you maybe this summer.
It's funny. It's kind of the same thing, except we're committing to a music podcast. So look for something like that in the near future. Because we both have we're both big metal fans, and Jonathan actually plays in a band, so we had a chance to talk about some of the new equipment we've acquired, and I'm looking forward to it. So more to come.
That's awesome, man. I'll say, don't hesitate to let me help promote such a thing, because if anything works in the history of the world, it's peer pressure, and if I can get more people to download and to listen to such a cast, which will then hopefully peer pressure you guys to just keep creating more content, then I'm completely on board.
Even better yet, I think, if anything, given the quarantine and everybody locked in these days, I would like to think that this is also a good opportunity for folks to start discovering, some of the podcasts and some of the newer shows. And, you've got a whole network. So I'm hoping those folks are actually seeing an uptick in some of their downloads.
Well, I listen to, too many. I've been over this. A lot of podcasts. One of them is called Pod News, and they have reported like a unbridled surge in downloads. It slowed down and then it dipped a little bit, but overall for the last 3 weeks, everybody is seeing bigger and better numbers, especially if you fearmonger and put the word COVID in the name of your podcast. You're getting extra downloads. Unfortunately, we're getting now swamped with even more complete mediocrity in terms of value of content, but it is also highlighting the complete incompetence of enterprise people who are now forced to do podcasts at home, and the quality that we've seen out of them has been quite literally something that I've only witnessed like back in 2007. Unfortunately, though, because they have corporate sponsorship, they're going to catch up really quick and do better quality. But I'm literally enjoying hearing these, in air quotes, professionals being forced to do podcasts from home and literally sounding like something I did from my car, I want to say in 2010.
Well, let me go out on a short limb here with a short story, and I'll try to make this whole meandering, mindless thought have some kind of coherence to it. All right, so very quickly, one of the great things about it is that I unabashedly love McDonald's. I will go to McDonald's by myself, hamburgers, fries, the whole 9 yards. I love them, and I'll leave it at that. However, it's interesting because, a lot of folks, and Jim Gaffigan has a comedy bit about this, where, all these people look at you, it's like, ugh, you mean that I'm better than you? Well, the short of it is this, one of the things that I think really highlights, as much as you think corporations can steamroll things, when the day is done, it's actually the consumer that actually directs or at least alters the direction a company takes. So, for example, one of the things that McDonald's does very well is, their breakfast stuff, and something like that. And whenever something is not taking, they take it off the shelf, they re-engineer it, and bring it back. And they've kowtowed to folks who want lettuce and stuff for their lunches, and they made salads. So where I'm going with this is, so we have a lot of these tech magazines and articles that highlight the failures of Zoom and, some of these other applications. But, I think one of the things that folks need to do is that you need to take some of these articles, take a breath, is essentially what I'm saying. Because one of the things that we kept hearing was, oh, Zoom bombing is a thing. Zoom is all insecure. It's everything you could do to rip down an application. They spoke about it. But one of the things that's really interesting is that the folks over at Zoom are very aware of this, and they have engineers who are actively trying to work out all of the bugs because, quite frankly, before this all happened, all they were was just another option. You had Microsoft Link or Skype, whatever you want to call it. And this was the next generation. And when they were thrust onto the scene, the team found themselves in a place they've never been before. Wildly popular, wildly insecure, but widely used. In fact, I know that Harvard University, for example, uses them for all their courses now. And so with just a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of common sense, this is an application that does a fine job. Another highlight too that I wanted to mention too is that there was the Instacart thing that happened over the last couple of weeks, and we've heard it from both sides. Customers ripping them off, taking, zero, adjusting tips to zero, and then some of the Instacart shoppers just walking off with the groceries, things like that. Now, again, this fear mongering that's going on is less than 1% of the actual bad doings that are going on. So consider that. One last item I want to bring up is Instacart itself. We're using it, and I think what would be useful to a lot of people who aren't aware of this, when you go in there, yes, you see that it's booked solid for the next 2 weeks. But there's a thing that folks don't realize. You actually need to put a little time in, sit on it, put in your shopping cart, put in how much you're willing to pay the tip, and then refresh your page. Ultimately, somebody's going to pick that up. And that's something I wasn't aware of before. And so, best time to do it, Tuesday morning, because everybody's already done their weekend shopping. And, and tip the people right. I use the full 20% because they're doing something I don't want to do. And, I've already had a couple of deliveries, and I got to tell you, it's a great service. And, the takeaway here from this is don't be dicks about it and just do the right thing.
Yeah, I'll say I'm a firm believer. I don't want to say I've always been. I feel like I've always been a firm believer in over tipping for a couple reasons. One, we're one of the few countries in the world where tipping actually happens. We're also one of the few countries in the world where people can legally get paid less than minimum wage. Okay. I don't know how much the Instacart people are getting paid, but I do know this. If they get caught, they're going to lose their car insurance because 99.999% of them are not getting business insurance in their car, and they're using it for a business purpose. So because they're taking that risk, number one, because they're literally going into stores and buying things, for me, I am perfectly okay with tipping more than 20%. The example I'll use, Bruce, is Texas Roadhouse is a chain restaurant that has no barbecue, yet it's called Texas Roadhouse, which is kind of like a Swedish restaurant not having Swedish meatballs, but I digress. I literally gave 100% tip the last 3 times we went there and picked up their packs. Everywhere I go that I can tip, I've literally been giving 50 to 100% tip every time because I'm still working 40 hours a week. The wife is still working 40 hours a week. We're going to get this in air quotes free money from the federal government soon that our kids are going to pay for forever. And so I'm going to disperse the wealth. I'm not going to sit here and hoard and buy 300 rolls of toilet paper. I'm not going to sit here and hoard and say this is the end of the world and keep my money close to me. This is the time when humanity should think Philip Trample. I can't even say the word right. Philanthropic.
Oh, philanthropic.
Thank you. Philanthropic. Because that's what made this country, in air quotes, great. Okay. Now, I'm going to have a surprise link that I'm going to put in the Mumble for Bruce, and I'm going to put it in the YouTube chat as well. So if you're watching us on YouTube, you will see the link. This is to a website called humanprogress.org. This website is devoted to, in air quotes, good news. Now, what I will say is that like this, you will never go to this website and see death counts. You will never go to this website and see how it's the end of the world. You'll never go to this website and see deaths or shootings or floods or whatever. You'll only see good news. This is what we need, me personally, need in April 2020, because right now we are seeing a surge of suicides, home batteries, and child abuse like we've never seen in this country before. We need good information to try to offset all of the crap links that people are sharing on social media. So I encourage people, go to humanprogress.org and browse and peruse maybe every day or two. Now, I won't lie, they also post videos from, I believe it's pronounced Johann Norberg, which I'm very comfortable with my sexuality, and I would say he is a very sexy fella who has very short videos on YouTube called Dead Wrong. Each video is maybe a minute and a half long, and every time that man speaks, it's like I'm listening to Christ himself talk, kind of thing. He is so accurate and so intelligent and so on point and so smart about what he says. I cannot beg people enough. Go to humanprogress.org and peruse at least every couple of days.
Well, on that note, there have also been some folks who have done some really good deeds too. I really wish I could like Tyler Perry's movies. They're so awful. But,
Yes.
the man paid for, 73 different grocery stores. He took care of all of the seniors during senior hour at 73 different grocery chains.
Yeah, and we're going to get to Linux sooner or later, but I'll say this. What actually made America, yes, I didn't say the A, America was people's givings. We give more than any other country that's ever existed, any other civilization that's ever existed. And I have no problem saying I've sent emails to 100 people asking them if there's anybody remotely close to me that needs anything. Let me know. We have like our local school system giving away meals 3 times a day or 3 meals a day for kids because they believe that there are poor kids that aren't able to eat. I could go there and get the meals, be a cheap, SOB and go get the meals. I'm not, because again, I'm going to save that for people who need it. I'm giving tips. I'm giving money. I'm trying to give support. I'm trying to give clarity also to other people. Which is, dare I say, in line with what I consider to be open source ideals, open source methodologies. And without sounding dumb, this is the point in time in history when we're going to become more comfortable with teleworking, but I also believe we're going to have a hidden injection of morals and ethics into communities and peoples and organizations that we're not going to realize is actually happening because we as people want to always do what we think is the right thing.
Well, once we're beyond that point and we're all ready to return back to work, that's the other part about it that we're gearing ourselves up for because, there are some stark realities that we're looking at. We have a hiring freeze at work. We've already discussed that there'll be no raises in the upcoming year. And actually, working from home might become more of a reality in more of a permanent way because apparently one of the biggest costs to the schools has been the real estate. And the building that we literally just moved into is costing an arm and a leg. And so it's much cheaper for them to keep us at home. They'll do that. And I can't say I don't hate the idea.
Well, I'll say this: I have completely mixed feelings about it because perfection is unobtainable for everybody. Um, I like you. I don't want to say hinted at because you said it very directly last episode. When you work from home, you have to be much more insistent about putting barriers up. I used to answer work emails at 2 a.m. if they came in because I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be nice. I wanted to help people. I've told my supervisor, I've told, actually, I'm orphaned on the org chart. I don't belong to anybody. I'm out there like by myself. Um, but I told the people who I talk to who are management that never expect me to respond to anything on non-business hours moving forward because I have to draw a line. In fact, nothing work related is on any of my personal equipment. Only the purchased equipment from my governmental organization has my communication software on it with them. Nothing else has it on anymore, which is healthier, I think, for everybody involved. We have to make our own decisions and our own choices of when to communicate, why to communicate, and how to communicate. And when we take a day off, that doesn't mean we're going to still answer emails. It means we're not. And some people have a hard time understanding that.
Well, and agreed because one of the things that I got an email from, these auto emails saying, "Hey, you are now at the absolute limit for vacation days. So, starting Monday, I'm on vacation."
Gotcha. Um, every week, I'll say it like this: every week, I send Bruce a list of I don't know, some number of URLs and descriptions that I always just suggest is this is the kind of thing we can talk about. We sometimes talk them up. There is a couple that I wanted to explicitly talk about. One of them is it was called Huawei joins major US based open source patent protection consortium, which is a mouthful, called the OIN. And I'll say OIN is the Open Initiation Network, which has everybody in it from Google, Facebook, big major code contributors, including Linux itself, where what they do is they basically give their patents to this organization for everybody to use to put out in the open. If anybody thinks that anything is purely good or purely evil, I have no problem saying out loud, you are deluded. Okay? There is no absolutes in this world. Everything is a shade of gray. Huawei decided that it would look better, the optics would look better if we would just take this technology and give it away. And in fact, I'll say, with all this 5G stuff, they actually said that they would be more than willing to basically give away every single 5G patent if it meant people would stop calling them evil and claiming that they're trying to, get into every system in the world kind of thing, because they are so confident in their ability to progress and do different technology just as good as they're doing this 5G technology. They've actually offered it up, and people who think that they're controlled by the Chinese government, I'm going to say this: every company with enough influence is controlled by whatever country they sit in. AKA, if you don't think Google is controlled by the US government, I don't know what to say, except you're deluded. If you don't think Facebook is manipulated by the US government, I don't know what to say. It's just a fact of life. So don't focus on that. Focus on what's actually happening in the real world. And if you don't know about the Open Initiation, OIN, I beg you to go take a look at it. It's a real thing where real companies are actually giving away patents to the greater collective. And for Huawei to do this kind of thing is just another reason why I am sitting here staring at a Huawei device. My last 3 devices have been Huawei devices because they're unbelievably affordable and rock solid, work like a charm. So the Open Invention Network, OIN, is one of those things I definitely beg people to look at, to evaluate, and just look at once in a while, because what you'll see is this is where technology is going. We've said for decades we believe open source will win. This is open source winning. It's just happening at a very slow, methodical rate, is what I'll say.
Well, it's interesting that Microsoft is part of this, and anything Disney. Huh, holy cow! Well, that's those are 2 heavyweights right there. But uh, when I think of Huawei, I think of major lawsuits and probably a company that's not so trustworthy. But again, as I don't know too much about phones, I'll just limit my comments to that way. Let's just put it this way: my perception of them is not very good.
Well, I'll say no company is trustworthy. And if somebody thinks a company is trustworthy, again, you're deluding yourself. People are trustworthy. Companies have to make profits. 2 completely different things. But I will say, having companies like Microsoft, like Facebook, like Google, like Amazon, like all of these companies involved in the OIN, to me, is proof that we are winning, because they have no choice but to take part in this open thing, or else they'll be chastised, or else they'll be shunned, or else they'll be frowned upon, kind of thing. We need to take it as a win. At the same token, we cannot relent. We have to make sure that we keep pressuring them to do more and more and more, because the ultimate win is where all of their code is unbelievably open, and what they actually have to barter on is services, support, and customer respect, because none of them seem to be doing a good job at that.
Well, this actually speaks to the comment made earlier about consumers driving the direction of the company, and people want this stuff. They will make sure it succeeds.
Absolutely. Another link I wanted to bring, and I'll say it like this: as soon as I saw this link in my feed, the first thing I did was I pinged Tracy Holtz and I sent him this link, because I knew he is a powerful consumer of content. And what I mean is, if he can download anything and have it locally, he will always shoot for that option. And there used to be a tool called Download Them All. It still exists, but its support has literally dropped off the face of the earth. So I found this one called Down Zem All, DOWNZ or ZEMALL. And what this basically is, it's a standalone thing, Windows, Mac, or Linux, or you can integrate it with your browser. There's tricks to do that, where you literally just put a web page in it, hit go, and it looks a lot like the old school Download Them All thing, where you can say, give me every zip file from this page, or every audio from this page, or every video from this page. The example I'll use is, back in the day, you would go to an audiobook page and there would be literally 20 links, one for each chapter. And you would just load down them all and say, just give me all the MP3s. This to me is one of those invaluable tools that can allow you to own content instead of having to rely on bandwidth or on an internet connection. And there is instances where it does even work with YouTube, where you can put in a YouTube link and download the audio part of it. This is one of those tools that is going to be in my repertoire moving forward, as long as it works. And I can tell you, I've used it a hell of a lot, in the last week, and it works exactly like the old web extension. It just works like butter.
Wow, this is phenomenal. Does it allow you? I saw that it has the Opus extension, so it allows you to save as OGG as well.
It depends if you install that. If the codec is available on your system via FFmpeg, I'm pretty sure it will allow you to save it as nearly anything. I'll say on one system I have, it only let me do MP3, OGG, AAC, and something else. But on my main rig, it had like 3 or 4 more choices, and one of them was Opus. Again, if you're in bandwidth constraint areas, aka like you're a trucker, aka the people keeping this nation alive, this is the kind of tool that really can help you own your own content, maintain it, and download it locally.
Yeah, phenomenal. Now I know it. I have a new toy to work with.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I don't want to say it's fun, but it's the kind of application that once you start to use, you figure, oh wait, I can go get this, and I can go get that, and I can download all kinds of stuff. And it just works, I'll say, like butter is what I'll say. The 2 more links I want in the notes, Bruce. We talked about Admiral Jonathan Nadeau, and we talked about the Star Trek Bridge Simulator tool, and I'm saying this slow because I need to. And I'll say it like this. I have not cried or wept or even felt emotion from a movie or a television show maybe my entire life. I mean, I don't. I watched Star Trek Picard on my Plex server, and I wept like a baby, is what I'm going to say. It hit me. The 2 links in the notes will be, one is to Artemis. Artemis is a spaceship bridge simulator on Steam. Unfortunately, Windows only. So the next link, and I only am bringing that because I believe that was the first one we talked about, which worked on every platform. But then when they got popular, they kept dropping platforms. So another one has came to take its place, and I believe it's called Empty Epsilon, which is a multiplayer spaceship bridge simulator. This is how I'll explain it to everybody. I'm here. Bruce is there. Jonathan is where he's at. Jonathan has no screen, but we connect on like Jitsi or Google Hangouts or Skype or Zoom or whatever the hell you want to connect with. It doesn't matter. Or a phone call. You can literally do a phone conference. And I have my screen in front of me. I could be the tactical officer. Bruce could have the screen in front of him. He could be navigation. We can only tell Jonathan, because he's the captain, what we see in our screens, and it's Jonathan's job to tell us what to do. This is one of those silly, stupid, fun games that was designed from the ground up when there's an actual quarantine that's in effect. So I'll say it like this. Anybody out there who wants to like try to play this, just let me know. We'll try to coordinate a time that's friendly to all parties, because this is the kind of thing I really would like to at least get a distraction here and there and have some fun.
Nope, you had me going, so I was just listening to you.
Well, and I'll put it like this. It doesn't look perfect. It doesn't look great, but if you just go to Empty Epsilon, if there's a GitHub link, the screenshots, I will tell you this. Open source gaming has grown incredibly in the last couple years to where I'm not going to say this looks as good or better than Artemis, but I will tell you this. This is the kind of thing that looks really damn good. I don't know what the minimum number of people that are needed to play a game, but there it is. I just had to say that because I would like to pressure Jonathan Nadeau to joining us for a game or two.
Nice. Well, I think one of the things about this too is that I think probably about 3 years ago, I actually downloaded Steam and started looking at some of the games that they had there. And, there are a lot of decent first-person shooters and things like that. And, it's had plenty of time to develop over the years. And, the games out there, I'm a very basic gamer as it is. I'd prefer pinball any day, but the fact of the matter is that you have options in Linux, and it's one of those. I say embrace it. Um, I think the time is to revel in what you have. This stuff looks good.
It really does. And I want to say it's called Pinball FX3. Links will not be in the notes because I don't, this is on the fly. I want to say it's called Pinball FX3. Literally right now it's free on Steam. Correction, I believe it's always free on Steam. It was free on the Nintendo Switch. If you want extra tables to play on, it costs money. One of the better pinball simulators is what I'll say. Games I've ever played. I enjoy pinball, but when you enjoy pinball, it means you enjoy a certain amount of frustration, is what I believe. But I definitely had fun playing it.
Nice, nice. Now, actually, one of the things I was going to sort of segue through too is that we were actually working with some of the enterprise stuff. I wanted to actually go back to the Kanban board that you had there because one of the things I was going to say is that one of the alternates to that is Trello, which they actually offer a free version of that where it's the same thing, a little bit more slick. But if you're looking for something that's just stripped down and does the job, this Kanban board does a good job as well.
Yeah, I'll say all the podcasts I've listened to in the last week and a half, Trello has went ad apocalypse. They went ballistically crazy, pushing ads, shoving ads nearly violently down everyone's throat, saying that they're here to help you.
Wow, I didn't know that.
They are, but they're not. They're out for profit, is what I'll say. Trello started at a really good place, okay? And now I think they've been bought and they've been handed over a couple times. They're still really, really usable software. They do have a free tier and it does work really good. But I'll say the idea of how their software functions, and I don't even know what to call their software. It's like a Scrum categorization progress type tool. The numbers of software out there that's like it is insane, which is good and bad because there's going to be features you want that certain free solutions don't have. There are going to be solutions that you didn't even know you needed that open source solutions will have. There's little doubt in my mind Trello has the best overall functionality and functions, but you got to remember you don't own it. If you insist on owning it, owning the stream, owning the server, owning the data, feeling comfortable putting personal, private information into such a system, then you really do need to own it yourself. Kanboard, I will say this, it is basic. If you are a basic needer of just focusing on goals and getting goals done with minimal documentation, I do think Kanboard is a very good solution.
I totally agree. I think one of the things that right here is my Achilles heel. I'm horribly unorganized. It's just even when there are things that I know I need to do, I fail at it mightily. I attempt by writing a few things down and taping it to the monitor, but we know where that ends up, on the floor like everything else. So to put something like this and pin it to your desktop, I think it would be a good start. And we talked about this before too. I mean, just everything from trying to organize your exercise routines to, maybe taking a few minutes to learn code, things like that. At this point in my life, I need a little bit more structure and less wasted time, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite television shows, which I don't really watch a lot of television, was Alton Brown's Good Eats, where he swore organization will set you free. And I never doubted him. But it still smells like a hell of a lot of work, so I don't do it. This other link I wanted to share, literally just so it's in my like feed and stream to where I can find it at a later date. I'm sure we've all came across a thing that we downloaded and then we went to try to extract it and we found out we don't have the right things installed in order to use that compression file. Like sometimes I don't have 7-zip installed, and I really don't want to install a complete package just to get this one damn thing opened. Okay. If what you're doing is non-sensitive, you're just downloading a game from the internet or something from the internet. This site actually does work really well. It's called extract.me. I believe. Let me see. Yeah, yes. Extract.me. And it's a very simple website. You just go there, you upload your PKZip file or whatever file, or you point to a URL that has the file, and it will convert it to a more, in air quotes, friendly format. It works with nearly everything from RAR to PK7-zip, zip, and tar gzip, and I mean every other kind of thing in the world. If you don't want to have to install one package for just using one time, this to me was a great solution.
Yep, I think one of the great things I like about our time now is that with bandwidth being as open as it is and as large as it is, there really hasn't been much of a call. But I know the pain of when it comes time to, that miscellaneous file somewhere down the road, and yeah, you're right. Without having 7-zip or something like this would really help in a pinch.
Yeah, and I just love having these kind of tools available to me because hypothetically, I could be on a, let's just say, less capable computer like a Chromebook to where I just need this damn thing unextracted. Having these kind of tools available to me are just, to me, honestly, gold. Um, Honestly, Bruce, there's still a couple more links I wanted to play with here. One of them, I don't think I have the right URL. What I'll say is I'll try to get this URL for next week. Visual Studio is trying to make a completely online version of their product, aka turn it into a unbelievably controllable, like Stranglehold controllable monthly subscription service. I've tried it at work. It sucks. But there is a website, I want to say it's called Gitpod, GITPOD.io, which I played with just a little bit, and I'll just put it like this. What I saw, I was shocked. I was literally shocked at how well everything worked. It basically let me launch, it wasn't Visual Basic, it wasn't VS, it was IDE Eclipse Thea, THEIA. It allowed me to launch a full version of Eclipse in a web browser that functioned exactly like the full desktop installation. And if you go to gitpod.io, you can self-host it yourself, which means you can run the lowest powered thing, a Raspberry Pi 1, and you could literally access your local server with this installed, and you can do true development right from your browser. This is the kind of tool that I'm literally like hot about, and I almost can't wait for this kind of thing to become really mature, really full featured, because in 6 years I'm going to retire from my 9 to 5, and when I do, I think I'm actually going to be doing a fair amount of what I call personal development work, aka I want to develop things that I find useful to actually fit a solution that I need.
Well, actually, it's funny because for me, it's sort of the same thing. I want to be an active member of the community, in quotes, but I also want to be able to actually tweak and fix the things that need to be fixed. So, and I know exactly what avenue I'm going down. It's, anything having to do with audio, mixers, the whole 9 yards, because that's actually where most of my stuff is leaning towards. But it's funny that we're bringing up Eclipse because we're actually getting ready to take a Python course through work next week. And I was thinking, if I could find something like this, I'd be in good shape. And looks like you've already done the footwork for me. Or I think your vocals went off.
Sorry about that. I did play with it for just a little bit, just did some very light coding in it. And I'll say IntelliSense is the Microsoft technology, they call it, when you start to type and it intelligently suggests what you should complete it with. That was working really, really surprisingly well. It was, I don't want to say it was like it was installed on my local desktop, but it was nearly like it was installed on my local desktop because people, it's just ASCII characters you're sending back and forth. ASCII characters are like the smallest bits and bytes you can ever imagine in your life. So to get really good performance out of a remote IDE is, I think, very, very possible, even on bandwidth limited connections of 20 megabits a second or something.
Well, I'm not surprised that the development for these kind of frameworks has gotten better because, I mean, let's face it, coding is really about what it's all about today. And the different languages, whether it's Python, now we have some of these more fringy type of programming languages like Rust, which I just heard about not so long ago. And I mean, there's machine language that we're getting down to now. I mean, boy, I'll tell you get lost in all of this. But I do expect, along with the different languages to come along, I'm sure there's a programmer out there who's pulling out his hair because it doesn't do the things that he's looking for. And this is one of those that I think is a huge help and a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I'll say, I'll just put it like this: there's more than a couple people I've spoken to virtually and online who said, they just entered the workforce in the last couple years, and in air quotes, they wouldn't have a job paying as good if they didn't listen to what I said 8 to 10 years ago. Like, I used to push security. You want a guaranteed big paycheck, get into security. Then it was like automation is a great way to have guaranteed future money. Right now, Rust is powerful. It's going to be really powerful here in a couple years. And the long and the short of it is, future operating systems, the next generation of operating systems, will be written in Rust for a lot of good reasons. But also, if you would like money right now, go take Blitzkrieg courses on COBOL. And unlike some really incompetent newscasters out there, or journalists, I'm not going to call it cobalt with a T at the end because there is no T at the end. Go learn COBOL because people are dying left and right because they're old who know COBOL, and countries, governments, and banks are starting to pay insane amount of money if you know COBOL. If your goal is money, right now in 2020, April 2020, you learn yourself some COBOL, you are guaranteed to be stinking rich by 2021.
Well, actually, New Jersey just put out a call for anybody who knows COBOL. In fact, that was actually one of the leading headlines yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we do have an email, Bruce. Did you want to go over that one?
Oh, yeah, we should have started the show off with it, but better late than never. Oh, I'll take the lead on that. So I tried to contact you guys in the past about Pine Foam, but because of my email, I think my email is considered spam. So I sent the questions again. By the way, the show is great. Thank you. Since you guys set up a Mumble server, I assume you guys already know, but just in case, there is a pretty cool list of self-hosted, FOSS and privacy-aware respecting programs that you can use at privacytools.io. By the way, he's not a paid shill for them or anything. And speaking of password managers, why not KeyPass XC? Do you think Padlock is more secure? I think he was getting me confused with somebody else, but talk a lot about must listen to podcasts. But to be honest, you guys are the only Linux podcasts that I hear. Are there any interesting no nonsense BS ad free Linux podcasts that you guys can recommend? If so, do you guys mind sharing? Well, let's see. Oh, and the last question: do you guys Have you guys ever heard of Libre open source hardware projects like Libre Boot or Talos Raptor or the Power PC? What are your ideas on them, and is there any future for these type of projects? Not for Power PC. Actually, I
Yes.
kid. Nah, I'm just gonna leave the Power PC one alone.
Yeah, what I'll say is, are there any other Linux podcasts that we can suggest? I already have. I mean, I try to all the time mention unbelievably quality content like Going Linux, like GNU World Order. Like, to be honest, if you want some of the best Linux content that has ever existed, you have to go to archive.org and listen to Linux Reality with Chess Griffin. Even
I
though
was
it's,
about I was about to say exactly that.
yeah, I mean, even though now I want to say it was nearly 12 years ago, maybe, when he did that show, 99.999% of everything he said in that show is true today. And he is, he had, he still does, I'm sure. The charisma comes off as if he's literally speaking to you. I have no problem in saying this. I strive every episode of everything I do to be more like Chess Griffin in his delivery, in his persona, in his mannerisms, in his patience, and in his understanding. And I'm never going to be as good as Chess Griffin. So if you like Linux podcast, go to archive.org, Linux Reality, start with episode 1, and then just download at your leisure and enjoy, because it's the best stuff ever.
It's kind of like the Monty Python of Linux. It's one of those where the content is timeless. It was relevant then, it's relevant now, and that's the magic of it. Now, some people have the, I don't know, maybe even the foresight, but the fact that it's still relevant even today, that's surprising.
Yeah, and I'll say KeyPass X, C, KeyPass, it doesn't matter what KeyPass version you're talking about. None of them are, in my personal, humble opinion, secure whatsoever, because they all use your clipboard. Any application that relies on something publicly addressable by anything installed on the computer, anything installed locally has access to the clipboard by default. And for a password manager, doing the most secure thing ever on your computer to rely on such a mechanism, in my humble opinion, is completely ridiculous. And if I can tell you, if I was creating a password management solution, the first thing I would do is to create a chain between my application and the receiving application, whether it be a web browser or a individual application, to put the credentials in there without using something like the clipboard. For something like KeyPass in any shape or form to be using the clipboard, to me, is just an utter ridiculous example of the absolute complete ignorance on what it means to be secure. And I'll just leave it like that. Padlock, as far as I can tell, Padlock does not use the clipboard, and the other one, Passman, does not seem to use the clipboard. I could be completely wrong, but when I tested them and I reviewed the clipboard logs, I didn't see my credentials. With KeyPass X, every time I installed it, it uses the clipboard. So I will never use it, ever.
That's interesting. I treat passwords like I used to with phone numbers. Many when for a lot of us kids who grew up without a cell phone, there was the notion of, you wrote down your friend's phone number, and over time you memorized it. I mean, we knew our neighbors' phone numbers, everything, and at this point, I'm keeping my memory sharp by remembering all my passwords to everything, and they're different for every application, and it's not as difficult as it would seem on the surface, and especially if you use these applications every day, you'll always have them in mind. The only challenge is maybe the first week of the new year, because I change my passwords every year.
Well, and I will say, short tangent, NIST. National Institute of Standards and Technology in the United States of America is the organization that tries to evaluate things like passwords. They said a couple months ago to force people to have special characters, to force people to have numbers, to force people to have uppercase and lowercase characters has proven to weaken security substantially, because people will always go with the lowest common denominator of just changing the number in a password from 0 to 1 or something like that. And it's true. They also said forcing password changes on a number of days that have passed has also proven incredibly insecure. They say each institution should look at changing passwords when key personnel has changed. Also, they say length of password seems to be more valuable than complexity of password, and I absolutely agree with that. I personally use GRC password generator to get 63 character passwords, and honestly, that's what I use as my main password management generator. I have started to use Passman, which is a add-on to Nextcloud here in the last couple weeks, and it's working surprisingly well, is what I'll say. And I do want to highlight privacytools.io. I'm going to do everything to make sure that this link is in the notes. I will say it like this. I've seen plenty of websites that say, here is the self-hostable solutions that are available to you. None of them look as good as this website. So this is definitely going in the queue and going in my back pocket. It also gives like justifications and reasons why people should self-host, which is really good. I'll say this is the kind of information I want to share with more people. So I definitely thank you very much. I believe it's Alphonse, and I'll say I apologize for missing any email. We at Podnuts try to answer every email that comes in air quotes, unless you're a stinking troll, then we don't answer. That's just the fact of life. We are under no obligation to do anything. We do everything out of the good graces of our being, and that's it. So, Alphonse, I am really apologetic for missing any emails that you sent us, because this honestly had some really good questions.
Oh, absolutely. In terms of some of the podcasts, these days I'm hard pressed to go into too many of them, because the last one that I've been following is not really tech related at all. It's Mark Maron's podcast, and that can be kind of hit or miss with some of the stuff that he's having. There's a hockey one called Spitting Chicklets, which of course is from Barstool Sports. They actually had an interesting one with Sean Avery the other day, but again, these are kind of niche kind of podcasts. So those are some of the fun ones if you want to, venture out of the realm of tech. But you know what? We're indoors for the time being, so I'm sure we'll be finding plenty more, in the upcoming episodes. So stay tuned to those.
Right, and I swear this is coincidental, just happenstance. It just happened to roll like this. I listened to 155 podcasts at a time. That's in my feeds, and I got to say this correctly. I don't listen to 155 podcasts. There's 155 podcast feeds in my podcatcher. Some of the podcasts are dead, and I literally stay subscribed to make sure I don't forget about them, or the content is so dang good, I want to make sure that I have it readily available to give to other people. Okay. Now, for the actual point, I literally launched a podcast the other day. So if I listen to 155 podcasts, if I literally publish one a day, that's 6 months worth of podcast. And that's what I started to do. And we're going to see how long I can continue on with this. But every day now there's a podcast that's put out, and it's nothing but a review of a podcast I listen to. The goal is each episode is less than 3 minutes. So far, I've been doing fan-diddly-tastic, is what I'm going to say, keeping it nice and short and brief. But if you want to have like regurgitation every day, less than 3 minutes of every podcast I listen to. Just go to podnuts.com, PODNUTZ, and you'll see podcast review, which I just got word today it's going to be renamed to the revolving door, because it makes sense, because I'm literally going to have to now nonstop pick up and discard podcasts to keep having new content to talk about. So that's a new podcast that just got launched. If you want to know what I'm listening to, what I think about it as well, in a very, very short time frame, that would be your ultimate way to get it.
Now, one thing that I want to mention that folks may not be aware of. Now, one of the sites out there called meetup.com, they actually host a lot of social networks, but the goal here is that they're in the Boston area. There's an Azure one set up by Microsoft. There are Linux ones, there's security ones. It doesn't matter. What does matter is this. Meetups are now all virtual, at least for the time being. And while they're virtual, take advantage of them, because there's some major content that's being put out there now. Microsoft is holding one starting next week. I think there's still at least 30-40 seats left. Go to meetup.com, Azure Boston, and starting every day next week, they're going to review Azure. And they're 1 to 2 hours. I think it's like from 6 o'clock in the evening to 8, and they're virtual. On the security front, same thing. Every Thursday, Security Weekly, Paul Asadorian's podcast, they release Yep. Oh, absolutely. They also release a virtual discussion every Thursday on some facet of security. So absolutely take advantage of them while you can, because chances are you're sitting in front of your computer anyway.
Yeah, and I'll put it like this. To quote Eric Bachman from Silicon Valley, when backed up into a corner, you have no choice but to just leash out unexplainably, wildly. When people in at least this country that I know of are backed into a corner, we innovate to hell and back. We do things that people think are unobtainable, impossible, and yet we do it. Whether it is get to the moon when people said it wasn't possible, or create medicines like to cure diseases that people said weren't possible. We have an uncanny ability to do the unthinkable under times of stress. Right now, in April 2020, if you don't have a job, we want to help, but now is the perfect time to invest in yourself. If you have money, it's also the perfect time to invest, because things are going to be blowing up here and you'll be making crap tons of money. But it's the perfect time to invest in yourself. And Paul Asador, I met him at like 2 conferences, and I just, chatted with him offhandedly. He had no idea who I was, and he shouldn't know who the hell I am. Unbelievably nice guy who takes his job ridiculously seriously and takes security maybe as serious as anybody I've ever met in my life. So if he is giving away knowledge, it's the kind of thing where if you at all expect to be in a security-minded job in the future and you don't pay him attention, you're literally doing yourself a disservice. I have no problem in saying that.
Well, more importantly, I think the biggest aspect and the appeal of Security Weekly and Paul Asadorian is he is the embodiment of community-run stuff. He has a wiki that is filled with, you want to learn how to run Metasploit? It's right here. You want to learn how to run Netcat? It's right here. Everything he does is above the board and he's more open than some of the open source communities I've been a part of. He shares everything.
Yeah, and I'll say I hesitate suggesting certain types of content. I really hesitate on suggesting certain kinds of things. So I really hope when people hear me say you should listen to Going Linux, you should listen to GNU World Order, you should listen to Paul Asador, I don't say those kinds of things lightly whatsoever. They really do come with a lot of thought and a lot of investigation is the way that I'll put it into each of them. I know a lot more about those three things than I think they're comfortable me knowing is what I'll say. And they're just really good stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I've got nothing more to say about that because it's out there, and Paul's stuff is heads and shoulders above anything else that I've ever seen. And this is one of the few communities where they really have shared as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, and I will say this: we're now rounding third. I did hear also from Cody Cooper in the last week, former host of this show or co-host of the show. He is doing pretty good. He is in like the normal American mind frame, working hard, trying to do everything he can to support everyone around him. So that was another good thing that happened in this last week. Never hesitate to reach out to people who you think might need you or you might need them. I'll say now is a perfect time too. Before I finish off the show, Bruce, is there anything you wanted to dive into?
No, no, we've covered just about everything.
Okay, one thing I will say I'm going to do different moving forward is every Saturday we do this show live. We try to do it live around 9:30 New York time. If you want to partake in it and join the live chat, all you have to do is follow us on YouTube, follow us on Discord, IRC, a bunch of different things, whatever, or just contact me directly, and I'll make sure you get the link when we go live. But I'm going to do one thing different. Every single link I send to Bruce, I'm going to put in the show notes because here's the logic. If you out there peruse these notes and you say, wait a minute, this is something you absolutely should have talked about, then it'll be a great way for you to do so. So I'm going to have more things in the notes, I'll say, than ever before, which I don't mind doing. I'll also say again, thank you to Alphonse from Indonesia for the email. If you're from a first world country, your email is on a lower rung than anybody else in the world because we here in the first world are using Linux out of a luxury. Okay, people everywhere else use Linux, I believe, more out of a necessity than us, or and just to be more private and protective of their own data, not trusting their government. Because I'll say this, it doesn't matter what country you live in. If you implicitly 100% trust your government, you are completely and utterly deluded and polluted, period. The whole point of, at least here in the United States, was to not trust your government and to make sure that they know we're watching them as much as they're watching us. Never forget, you can send us a voicemail at 7076podnut. You can send us an email at podcast@linuxfortherestofus.com. You can join us on services like Discord. You can join us on services like IRC that have been around since the 70s. And never forget, this show is not just for the experts. This show is not just for the people who are just learning about Linux, aka the newbie and the veteran alike, but Linux is for everybody, the rest of us in between all of those other solutions. And I'll say it again. I thank everyone for the downloads. I thank everyone for subscribing. I thank everyone for their communications. And I will definitely talk to everyone again real soon. I'll talk to you later, Bruce.
Take care, Dor.
Okay, I got to run to the bathroom real quick. I'll be back.
All right.
And we are still live,
Nice.
just to let you know. Doopity day. Okay, Bruce, sorry with that.
All right. And just sent you the file.
Awesome. Oh, man. Oh, crikey. Yeah. I figured on my DDG, like my journal type podcast, I kept saying I want to review the podcast I listened to. And then I stopped and thought, if I talk about a podcast for a minute, that's a 2-hour podcast. That's insane. No one's going to want to listen to that. So I said, I'll just, break it out into its own show. And yeah, this is the, changer thing that I've been using where I can literally, I don't want to do that. I can literally, to the people watching, just click these buttons here on my phone. Switch what's being sent to the live stream. Oh, wow. God, it makes things so easy.
Check that out. That's outstanding.
And that's the kind of thing that literally 4 or 5 years ago would cost $500 or more. Works like butter.
It's funny. One of the things I was thinking about is that we're talking about production and stuff like that. And it was just like, when you're working remotely, does it actually... I wonder if there's a way to actually have somebody else, sort of join and help us with the coordination of things like that, like emails and, kind of, assist with the queuing of, hey, this story's coming up or something like that. I guess it's something we could kind of think about going forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I'll say it like this, because like you said, man, organization it's a 4-letter word. But it's the kind of thing, if you can be organized, oh my God, everything is so much easier.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I think one of the things that I can do, too, is come up with a, like a green screen background or something, because we should at least be sort of, consistent in the appearances of the background at least. So,
Well, I have multiple colors, I'll say. I have blue, I have green, I have white, and I have black. So if you get one of them, I can easily change mine to match the color.
Yeah, well, actually, if you have blue, let's stick with that, because I can easily find something that'll cover the frame of what I have behind me. Not that it's terrible, but I think like anything else, for a show continuity, you kind of want that to be, we're better than amateurs,
Well, we try to be, as well say. And I will say like this: if you're watching my video, if I come here and I say, I do have utter control over my video to where I can literally change my white balance on the fly to where now I look like a president.
Oh yeah, you're burning up,
right? To where I can literally figure out what color to hold up in front of the camera, so to change it to the correct tone, so it actually will match your blue, because that's the key. Your blue has to match my blue.
Okay.
Kind of thing. Even if in real life they match perfectly, our white balances will not be. You know what I mean? So I have to figure out how to. I don't even know what the right word is. Figure out how to navigate that.
Well, also I need to work on the lighting better too, because here, let me try something. Yeah, it's really weird. Now all the lighting is up in front of me.
Well, I tell you, the best solution I found cost, I want to say, $6 or so. It's basically just a USB hub with different USB things in it. And these that I get off of eBay are just LED lights. And if you find them right, you can find them 3 for $1. If you find them wrong, They're about 80 to 90 cents a piece. It's the kind of light where if it's pointing at your eyes, you will get eye damage. They're so damn bright. And I just put them over here and point them behind me. I paid $200 to $300 in the past for lighting solutions that generated so much heat and took up so much square footage. It was ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the great things about having a job lots right down the street from us is that there are also some other lighting options I could do at pennies on the dollar as well.
Right. Yeah, because that sounds dumb. The most important thing, in my opinion, is not to overspend. You know what I mean?
Yep, exactly.
Because this, to me, video, I don't want to say is an afterthought because that is truly insulting it. Video is like a plus. It isn't, I don't believe anybody says, I can't wait to watch that video of this show. I think some people do, but I think they're in the extreme minority.
Yeah. Well, again, this is still the stages of, I think that you get to a certain point, it plateaus for a little bit, and then you start building up again, and it's in for the long haul. So I think that's one of the things that you have going for you right now. I mean, how many years has it been so far?
Well, if you want to ask that question, Bruce, I literally last week downloaded Linux Basics episode 1 and listened to it again with me and Russ Winter. It was 2008. So it's been 12 years since I started doing this kind of thing.
That is outstanding. Jeez, those are the things that seem like it was just yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, because I listened to the first episode and I was equally awkward, I believe now, versus then. I just think now I do a better job of hiding it. And I don't know if you remember that intro music, Bruce, to the old Linux Basics, but I heard that first episode and then I literally went on a mission. I got to find that damn song again and download it again because we did have an email from the actual creator that said, you can use it for whatever you like, just don't abuse it.
Nice.
So Josh Knucklehead Tech found the email, sent it to me, and I went on a quest. I went on a rampage and I found the intro music again, and it's literally called Funky Alphabet by Stomping Pete.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Yeah. And I listened to the intro and I thought, what am I doing? That 2 lines of the song perfectly represents me. It said, now you know your ABCs. You can sing your songs. Oh, no. You can say what you want, right or wrong. You can read your books and sing your songs. And I thought, why am I not using this music? So I immediately went in and I edited all my templates. So now moving forward, my Door to Door Geek Daily Journal podcast, that's the intro music to it because it should be.
Perfect. It's funny because one of the things I have noticed over the years is that when you do something as a first take, 9 times out of 10, that is the one you want to run with, know?
You hit it and you don't know it.
And look at the Linux Link Tech Show. That the person who did their theme song, that still fits them to a T even to today.
That's a nice way to put it. It fits them like a prophylactic kind of thing. It is. It just does, is what I'll say. Yeah. And honestly, I remember Bad Apples. It was better orchestrated than I think anybody realized with all that old kind of content.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. So we're talking about Chess Griffin's podcast, but there was also another one that had let's see, what was it? It was kind of like an all-star group of folks, and it was
Colonel Panic?
Nope, actually this is a little bit before that even. But it was the one that had, people like Stuart Langridge, John O'Bacon was part of it, one of the original group members. Jeez.
I know the name, but I can't think of it.
Yeah, I got to go back and find that because That was also a pretty good one too. I mean, it seemed like an open format, and they had a lot of folks that were involved in it. So,
Well,
you know,
now I lie when I say I don't watch TVs and movies. I do. I'm just very particular about what I watch. I don't watch a lot. In the last week, though, Bruce, I have no problem admitting to you, I've watched maybe 20 hours of Computer Chronicles with Stuart Chaffee. That was, I don't even know when it started. I want to say it started in the 70s.
okay. I never even heard of it.
Oh my.
No, lost you.
Sorry. Chronicles. It was basically like, man, I'm trying to think of how to say it. It's almost like if CNET, you remember the old CNET television show kind of thing.
Oh, yep.
It was almost like that, but decades, like 2 decades before it existed, before CNET existed. Stuart Chaffee was and I saw a really good interview with him like a couple years ago too. He would basically bring on these pioneers of, 286 and 386 and 486 hardware, and he would like showcase them, and then he would like deep dive into how they worked, kind of thing. Just man, some of the most eye-opening content I think I've ever watched in my life came from Stuart Chaffee.
That's funny. That is funny.
Yeah, like back in the day, like I don't want to say back in the day because it wasn't really that long ago in comparison, but like Leo Laporte had the tech guy, and he had I want to say it was Tech TV on the cable network and stuff, and it was good. Don't get me wrong, but everything he did, he learned from Computer Chronicles. I have no problem in saying that.
Okay. All right. And then after that, that's where now he was the one that brought Steve Gibson on ultimately.
Yes. Steve Gibson coined the phrase spyware, and he had him on to talk about SpinRite like version 1.0, and they immediately like fell in man love.
Now, let's see. You ultimately ended up with somebody from that network too. What is it? Rescue My Hard Drive or something like that?
Scott Moulton with My Hard Drive Died. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yep.
Yeah. So smart. And him and Steve Gibson like butt heads, like I don't know, like Artie Donovan and I don't know, Earl Weaver. I don't know, something, because they argue about what's the right way to do stuff, and they will never agree, ever agree.
Which probably leads to some of the most interesting talks you've probably ever even heard.
Yes, but unfortunately, the only conversations I heard between the two, I couldn't understand 80% of what they were saying.
Well, there you go.
It was like Ted freaking Show all over again. Seeing that guy talk at a conference, I literally said to myself, why am I not on hallucinogenics? Because I have no idea what this guy's saying. At least it should be entertaining.
There's always talk of trying to bring up some kind of fest. In fact, it was funny because when there was the Boston Security Summit here a couple of months back, I ran into one of the original creators of B-Sides Boston. And this guy's name is Tommy. And, we were talking, I guess there's so much infighting going on in the board B-Sides Boston that it's dead. But he'd suggested that if I'm interested in starting something up, he goes, you might want to consider calling it ChowderCon. But again, it's one of those things where I saw all the things that Jonathan and I went through just to get the Northeast Linux Fest up. It really isn't worth the hassle unless you've got many people to help with it.
Well, and honestly, I love Jonathan. He was not good at delegation. And you have to delegate or you will kill yourself, I believe. And I'll say it like this. Hey, seriously. It's like, Serenity Now, Clarity. 12 years ago, we talked about doing online conferences, and we had like me, John Newstetter, and we had stuff like literally blocked off and designed on how to do online conferences to where the main interface would be basically like an IRC type chat server. From the chat server, you would then fall down into a Mumble instance. And then from the Mumble instance, you would actually be put out to the actual places where the um, sessions would be given. And in those sessions, it would always be just the main talkers or talkers would have access. Nobody else would.
Appeared in 1980. Lost you.
Sorry. And like we had this thing all designed out to the T on how to do an online conference. And now the people who are like freaking out and trying to figure out how to do an online conference, I'm like almost laughing out loud, because this is the kind of thing that if we would have followed correctly 12 years ago, you imagine how like a kitten this thing would have purred today.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. We actually had our town hall meeting on Friday using Zoom, and we had 700 people on, and went off without a hitch.
Yeah, I mean, the power behind these things now is literally like insane. The Zoom people, I mean, I feel for them because they were not supposed to be public facing. They were supposed to be enterprise only, like behind firewalls. Now they're put out into the public sphere. They're suffering and they're trying their damnedest to be better. I don't know if they're going to succeed because they're such a target right now. I mean, they're making money hand over fist, but they're a target.
Well, I think a couple of things that happened to their benefit is they started to explain fully how to lock down a lot of your conferences, and more importantly, how to password protect them as well. Now, granted, that's probably the weakest entry point, but the fact that they did it is, again, it's just showing more about the product, and you can get it to do what you need it to do.
Yeah, and they changed the defaults, which is the key as far as I'm concerned. You can enable password protection and you can enable security features, but if they're not the default, most people won't do it.
No, not at all. Not at all. And again, it's like anything else. I think this actually stems from video conferencing that we had installed roughly 15 years ago, because Cisco was trying our T1 connections, and one of the very first conferences that we had that was successful was actually one with China, of all places. It was the president and our board members versus the Chinese delegation, and we had our first video conferencing. The picture came across clear. Everything was as perfect as you could get it. And we got to a point where when it came time to put everything online, we did not struggle. Everything went as we expected. The network guys really deserve some credit, because I got to tell you, for the longest time, their names were mud because they were unresponsive, they were slow. But you know what? When it came push to shove, they did their jobs.
Well, and it's like I tried to explain to my son. Certain people have the most unforgiving jobs that have ever existed. People in big enterprise network closets get no respect. Literally, they're the Rodney Dangerfield, because the only time someone mentions them is to complain and say that they're incompetent and say they didn't do their job, they didn't do this right or that right. The amount of, I'll just put it like this, the amount of quality network connections I've experienced in the last whatever number of weeks, they are doing some really damn good work.
No, agreed. So, we're getting to another point too, where Cisco actually has competitors now, and that can only get better for us, because we've actually started implementing the competitors now. So, yeah, we'll see how that plays out going forward.
Right. Yeah. Knucklehead Tech. One of the things he showed me, I didn't know it even existed, was QNAP. QNAP is I thought they made NASs and that was it. They have a switch you can buy that does, a 48 port switch, as manageable as any other switch, but also has built-in drive space where you can actually host solutions on it and do logging right there on the device. The competition we're going to see here in the next year, I think it's going to be crazy. I got to run upstairs for 5 seconds, Bruce.
All right.
Oh man. Yeah, and one thing I wanted to, I'm going to say, there's the meme picture of Homer Simpson backing into the bush, disintegrating into the bush. I'm sure you've seen that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm almost tempted to back into doing a Linux basics type podcast, but instead of letting anybody on like we did, literally check their ID at the door kind of thing. Because you mentioned having Jonathan on an episode or two. Dude, I don't care who it is kind of thing, as long as they're not idiots. One of the prerequisites we tried to do on Linux Basics was you had to bring links to the show. And I think that was a killer, okay? Because as you can see, I provide enough links for 4 hours worth of podcast. So the logic is we could invite people on who we genuinely just like talking to. And we could have literally 15-minute tryout periods. I don't care. I'll even have sound effects, ding, 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 now entering the arena, blah, 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 blah. And have people just literally come on, join Mumble, and just chat about stuff kind of thing. Because here's the thing. I'm now what I consider to be a non-absolutionist, which is, I have to say very slowly because it might come off that I'm racist, but I'm not. I'm a non-absolutionist. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is completely black. Nothing is completely white. Nothing is completely right. Nothing is completely wrong. I don't want to be completely open. I don't want to be completely closed. So I want to encourage people who think they might have something to say or an important position to represent to come on and chatter is the word that I'll use. Sorry, pun intended, chatter. I miss that guy. Because here's the real goal, Bruce. We could have somebody on who really might just, flick that switch and literally could become another podcast, either onto themselves, them and you, them and me, whatever. It doesn't matter. If I can help that kind of thing, I'll feel unbelievably good about myself kind of thing. So I'm at least saying it out loud putting it into the ether that doesn't exist because ether doesn't exist, but putting it out there that it's a possibility. But I never want to do anything with this show haphazardly, and without like explicit consent from everybody involved, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, I think it's a great idea. In fact, to tell you the truth, to be a launch pad for anything else, that's not a bad thing either. You know, and like I said, it's not even a nostalgic view of things. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Linux Basics because everybody was having a good time. Everybody, well, for the most part,
Yes,
anyway.
thank you. Yes,
After
virtually
a while,
everybody. Virtually.
after a while, there was some crazies, but over time, one of the things that I did not know, and I don't know where or how it started, but Regedit apparently there was some conflict there, and I'm not sure where it even came from because I mean, I just remember one time he came on the show and he was already half in the bag. And I had made a comment that somebody had a little too much to drink, but he must have taken great offense to that because it wasn't even a mild hate. He really hated me. It was like, wow, that's a little different, but okay. So I'm not sure if there was a misunderstanding or what, but boy, I'll
Well,
tell you.
I wouldn't say it was a misunderstanding. Nobody's perfect. Humans have flaws to the nth degree. Reg Exorcist was the other name he went by, had immense flaws. To start with, he was from Jersey. So he obviously had flaws. But he was unbelievably protective about certain things, overbearing about certain things, and reacted harsh about certain things. With all that said, I still think he was one of the smartest guys I've ever podcasted with. His insight, his experience, second to friggin' none. But if you said something that he deemed in his holy church of Reg to be bad, then you were doomed to hell for the rest of your being, and there was no returning no matter what you did, said, or thought or believed. He, to me, was a good learning lesson of you can't blindly believe everybody. You can't blindly trust everybody because people of all calibers, of all upbringings, of all backgrounds, of all beliefs can be bigger jerks than even I could be.
No, I was just shocked at how it all ended, because like I said, it went out in a big ball of fire. And to tell you the truth, I even to this day still don't have any animosity towards him. It's just
Same here.
it was more like I just had questions. It's like what happened. But I mean, again, we've had some other folks on there who've been really helpful and informational, and like I said, we had some really top shelf people, and that was one of the things I totally enjoyed about our time in Linux Basics. Oh, missing audio.
Sorry. My sense of time is completely wrong. I'm never right about anything. It might have been 2 years ago. It could have been 3, or could have been 4. It could have been 5 years ago. I don't know. John Newstetter came to OLF, and I was able to sit with him privately for like 2 hours, and we drank. The bottle of liquor cost $200, and we just kept sipping on it, just chatting the whole time. He's the kind of guy I will happily give up a portion of my life in order to meet him again and chat with him again. Because certain people in my past have shaped me to the person I am today. And I have no problem saying out loud, if it wasn't for John Newstetter stepping into my life, I wouldn't be half the person I am today. He was a big influence in me.
Oh, and
And,
super easy to work with too.
well, he's Canadian, eh? You know, I mean, all he wanted to do was make everybody happy.
Yeah, well, yeah, again, working with him on, I know that when the site was changing the content management, I think I even forget what it was, but I mean, it's gone through several
Drupal.
iterations. Drupal was one, and then
Yeah.
it went over to TikiWiki.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
that one was a little bit of a learning curve right there, but
Yeah.
once we get it all squared away, boy, I'll tell you, things fit and they worked.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'll say, we're all too damn busy right now in 2020 to actually devote any time to any of that kind of thing. But hanging with Knucklehead Tech, Bruce Patterson, John Newstetter, Russ Winter, Chatter, Regex. Oh God, I'm trying to remember the other guy's name. Jason. I pinged him. He pinged me randomly on Facebook. I'm never on. I might log into Facebook once every 3 months to literally curse at people. To tell them to go to hell. Stop trying to contact me. Jason Benoit, Ben something. But it's almost Benoit, but it wasn't
Benoit?
Benoit. It's close to that, yeah.
Yeah.
And he pinged me, and he's the kind of guy. Oh my God, chatting with him literally made me a better human being. Literally made me a better human being. And Jonathan Nadeau, to sit down and chat with him the first time ever, I felt like I'm like, a 13-year-old kid getting ready to be molested by a preacher, and I was okay with it because it was Jonathan Nadeau. You know what I mean? Do what you want. I'm here for you.
Well, I think one of the best parts about it was that I think it was after the very last Northeast Linux Fest, and it was you, Cody, Jonathan, maybe Honky Magoo. I don't remember, but yeah, just going over to the bakery afterwards and just sitting there and telling stories.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about. Like the professional wrestlers I've met, Tito Santana, King Kong Bundy, Iron Sheik. It's all about the stories. That's all they want to do. They just want to sit around and tell stories and entertain and get people's reactions, because them telling the story is another story they can tell. This one time I was sitting around, I was telling this story. I mean, that's what it's all about. Yeah. Hanging with those guys up there was, I love my kids. And yes, they're the high point of my life, but so was hanging out with you guys.
Well, it was time you never wanted to end because everybody was genuinely interesting. Everybody played a part. It was just those are the few times where it really makes being part of all of this worth it.
Yeah, right. And that's why I really do hope all this drama ends before August, because I would really like FalseCon to actually happen, and I would really appreciate if I could hang out with like Russ Winter and Jonathan. Can't remember his last name, the guy behind FalseCon, because he was another really like unbelievable. Nice
Simpson.
Jonathan Simpson, unbelievably nice guy. Sickeningly nice. The kind of nice you think to yourself, "What's wrong with you? Why are you so nice?" Just that kind of nice.
Well, I'm hoping that way too because flights are cheap,
Yeah.
and to go down there. I mean, what is it? It's $117 round trip to New York,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I had to explain to a friend, okay, $2 trillion divided by 300 million Americans equals $60,000 a person. Yet we're only getting $1,200 per person. All of that money is literally going to things like planes, trains, cruise ships, entertainment moguls, places, and like honestly, baseball, football, hockey, sports. Because what I tried to explain to him was, it's not that right now it's essential personnel only. It's actually the complete opposite. Anybody who did anything that drew a mass of people, 10 or more, is shut down. It's not essential personnel. It's anything that caused groupings of people is shut down, and those are the people who are going to get the money. Not me, not you. It's going to be institutions.
Yeah, well, I had no illusions about that. In fact, once I saw that the breakdown for some of that money, I know that 500 billion is actually reserved for major corporations.
Yeah.
You know, the airline industry is getting 20 billion of that.
Yep.
And you know, again, it's one of those things. I remember after 9/11, under the Patriot Act, one of the provisions is that for the following 5 years, each major airline would get $7 to $10 billion in assistance every year. And it's like, are you kidding me?
We're in the wrong business, man.
Oh, and yet you and I will never sit in business class.
No, if anything, we'll get molested as we go through the TSA lines. But that's about it.
Yeah, that's not wrong.
It isn't, and I hate to say it like this. And I tried to explain to a friend, the airlines are privately owned. Nothing to do with government, but if you notice, the government has their hand down the airline's pants, manipulating everything in every airport. It's in their interest to do so. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying they're wrong, but governments will not let airlines fail because they can't, because they are the main way that all government institutions and organizations get around. They don't use trains. Who uses trains? The answer is nobody, unless you're like huge lumping heaps of coal. They go through trains. You know what I mean? And cars get shipped via train, but that's about it.
You know, I think the thing is that it's the way the nation's infrastructure is. If we were allowed to have high-speed trains, that would be one thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the only high-speed train we have out of Boston goes to New York, and the only difference is 15 minutes. I can take a regular Amtrak, and it's 4 hours, or I could take an Acela, which costs $150 more for a one-way trip, and get there 15 minutes early. What the hell?
Don't worry. Elon Musk will fix everything. Oh, wait. I'm wrong. He'll fix nothing. Sorry. I digress. Yeah. And I tried to explain to somebody the reason why high-speed train works in Japan is because it's all one country. There are people that have devotion to self. Okay. In America, we have devotion to ourselves, which is different, which means a high-speed train cannot cross through my county without stopping and people spending money. So the idea of having like a cross-country high-speed rail system is a pipe dream. You might as well next think right now, okay, I'm going to bet my entirely yearly income on the Detroit Lions to win the Super Bowl, because that's more likely to happen than high-speed rail.
Yeah. Oh,
and we both know that ain't happening. Or the Cleveland Browns, one or the other. Because neither one has even been to a Super Bowl ever.
Oh, and it's unlikely that's going to happen either. Oh.
Well, I will say I am interested to see how sports act and react and pivot on all this happenings. I do think, I hate to say it like this, Bruce, I think esports are going to become more real to more people. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Well, I am disappointed that the XFL is done.
Yep. Bang, bang.
You know, the worst part about it is the second iteration of it was actually not bad. I could watch it, you know? Yes. But no, I think that Vince is just going to take a bath on it, or he's getting the bailout to cover all of the losses he had. So, well, that's a thing.
I'm sure it's going to end up being a financial benefit to him either way, because
Oh,
he's a very shrewd businessman.
what I did not realize, if you get a chance, there's you've seen John Oliver's show.
Yep.
Well, he had one on wrestling, which is totally worth checking out.
1 second, I gotta go up.
Yep.
Sorry about that, Bruce.
No, it's all right. So anyway, I think at this point, think I'm going to show myself out at 11:30.
Okay.
Anything else that you want to hit on or anything before we go?
Nah, no. I mean, we're good. I think we've honestly done really good too. I'm promising. I'm tempted to ask Jonathan to come on in the next couple weeks, but I know I have to do it gingerly. If you are comfortable with asking him, please feel free. Because I'm hesitant to ask him.
Oh no, I think he'd totally be up for it. I'll tell you what, I'll give him a call tomorrow and see. I can't imagine him not wanting to do it because Saturday he lives back in Putnam. There's not much going on there.
I got the impression if something is going on, then people need to worry.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Dora, I'll jump off from here. If you need anything else, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. I'm going to kill the stream and finish the editing. I'll talk to you later, man.
Perfect. Take care now.